So it turns out electric cars are worse than diesel cars. Let's have a look. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Heiser Says. I've got my stein of coffee, and I thought we'd talk about electric vehicles. Now, I've never had an electric vehicle. I've owned a Camry hybrid, and we still own it. Fantastic. Love it. Had a Smart for 2. I wanted to get that originally as an electric vehicle, but they never ended up producing them. I actually wanted to get the hydrogen hybrid ones, but they were only theoretical. That was a great car when it was just Rachel and I, just the beginning of our relationship, because no kids, wonderful. Now we also have, and it's probably going to be our main vehicle for a while, a Kia Carnival, which is about as fuel efficient as a Panzer III. But when you have a lot of kids, luxury things like fuel efficiency tend to go out the window. So I thought, let's have a look at this policy, because what Labor's saying, what Billy's putting forward, it doesn't seem like it would stack up. It really doesn't with regards to electric vehicles, because frankly, they're only as efficient as the source of energy production. And, I'm recording this video now, what's it, 6:17 in the evening. This is normally, if it wasn't a public holiday, this would be normally the time a lot of people would get home from work or would be sitting down for dinner and would plug their car in at home to recharge. And, there's no sunlight here, and we'll have a look at how much solar energy is being produced from rooftops right now. But Florian, you've got batteries. But batteries don't last forever and have embodied energy. Nonetheless, let's have a look at this article. This was published on the 1st of April, and I thought it was a joke. Honestly, I thought it was a joke. So, Labor wants to speed its flashy new electric campaign vehicle right through the coalition's big budget promises and energy policy confusion, and straight ahead of the election. It simply refuses to recognize any red light flashing at the intersection with climate change policy and the economy. Instead, it is promising Australians they can have it all. That's a good intro there, Jennifer. I like that one. Well written. It does show how it does quite eloquently present how it's being put forward, this energy policy, how we can have everything, it'll all be good, the world will be perfect. So much higher emission reductions, more renewable energy, 50% electric vehicles, cleaner fuel, cheaper electricity, protection for certain manufacturing industries, carbon farming for the agricultural sector. What's not to like? It sounds really good. It really does. But that's going to lead to the green recession Australia didn't have to have. So Bill Shorten says it's a genuine policy to tackle climate change and prepare for the future rather than being stuck in the past. Okay, now that sounds all well and good. If we had our own manufacturing capacity in this nation and we would be producing these vehicles here and then could export them overseas to kind of make up for our trade deficit, that might be a good thing. But when 35% of our exports are coal, how much of that's getting burnt? How much of that is getting used in steel production? What's the point in having 50% electric vehicles on our continent when our charging stations will be so dispersed it'll only be useful for inner city people and half of them want to ride bikes anyway? The broad coalition attack remained that Labor's reckless 45% emission reduction target is economy wrecking and the equivalent of imposing a massive carbon tax. The problem is, regardless of if it's the equivalent of putting a tax in place, which I'd say it is, it's not going to achieve anything. On a global scale, it is not going to achieve a bloody thing. People don't realize we're not that significant, guys. Australia is not that significant a nation. Sorry. I know we like to feel like we are, but we're not. We really are not. We need to humble ourselves. Bill Shorten doesn't have a plan. He just has another tax, Scott Morrison says, claiming Labor's record of fanciful schemes. Well, yeah. For big business with relatively high emissions, the most significant change will be the tightening of the government's mechanism for establishing an emission threshold. Under the more generous coalition scheme, this is set at 100,000 tonnes, covering 140 companies, but with none really penalised. Under Labor, a lower target of 25,000 tonnes will phase in to gradually bring in more than 100 additional companies operating under much tougher rules. Light on details. The Prime Minister dismissed Labor's proposal to allow Australian companies to buy international credits to offset their carbon emissions, mocking the notion of sending money to foreign carbon traders in Kazakhstan despite business support for this option. Okay, we've had a look at some of the carbon actual programs that are the carbon offset programs here in Australia that are used to generate credits. One of them is using indigenous techniques to burn bushland or scrub earlier in the year, earlier in the cycle, to potentially offset the risk of having it burn later in the cycle naturally and produce more carbon. Okay, that is how to earn a credit. Now just think about that. You should only get it once, but you get it every year it's done. What happens if there is no fire? Then, you're actually adding carbon to the environment because it may have been a longer period between natural fires. Perhaps, probably not. Using the indigenous techniques, that's fantastic. And, I'm of two minds of it. If you're going to be doing this type of con, really, to offset carbon from one industry to another, at least it's giving people in remote Australia work and some pride and using their local knowledge and taking care of our natural environment so you don't get bushfires everywhere. In some ways it's good, but think about it. Think about it. Is that really potentially that much of a carbon saving? It's not innovation. It is not innovation. It's using 45,000-year-old technology. How many of these green things aren't innovative? Windmills. I mean, sure, you build a metal windmill that uses electricity when there's no wind, but windmills are old. I saw a documentary, 1,000-year-old windmills still working in Persia. Iraq. So back to the article. It's $35 million Australian companies will have to shell out to meet Bill Shorten's reckless tax that is going to have a significant impact on the Australian economy, he insists. European carbon units are currently set trading at just $35 a tonne. Well, so little wonder Labor is deliberately vague on how the various schemes to achieve this will be implemented. It's all in the policy cloud, it seems. Yes, Shorten was asked to clarify the economic impact, and I'll talk about this a bit later when I'll read some of the independent assessments, but it's pretty grim. It's pretty grim. Yet the complexity and contradictions of the coalition's own energy policy, combined with the increased appeal of renewables, makes this argument more difficult to prosecute than when Tony Abbott won the 2013 election, demolishing Labor's carbon tax. Shorten and Mark Butler have also been able to use the coalition's own abandoned national energy guarantee as a framework for the electricity sector. Try complaining about that, Josh Frydenberg. Okay. But let's have a look a bit more. What's some of the things here? I'm not going to read through the whole thing. He's going vague, talking about Kyoto. But what I want to talk about here today is the electric vehicles. So where Labor is being more precise is on the target for electric vehicles, 50% by 2013, with government car purchases going to 50% by 2025. That sounds exciting, especially combined with an immediate 20% tax deduction for businesses and more government funding for charging infrastructure. Shorten even suggests a potential return of Australian car manufacturers for electric vehicles. Yeah, okay, great. And here we go. But given that there were only 1,352 electric vehicles sold in Australia last year, or 0.12% of new vehicle sales, they will certainly mean a radical change at a time when electrical vehicles are still much more expensive than their petrol equivalents. Yeah, they are. They really are. And there's a lot of risks associated with these vehicles. Remember, you're driving around with a huge ass battery, a huge lithium battery. So I thought we'd have a look at the horse's mouth directly. So let's look at Labor's climate action policy, investing in renewable energy and batteries to grow jobs and cut power bills. Okay, that's not innovative. That's not innovative. That's all old technology, batteries, whoop-de-doo. Boosting clean transport infrastructure, okay. Working in partnership with businesses to help bring down pollution. Pollution is really going down. We're not living in that polluted environment now. But if we go here, where is the cars? Here we go. Labor will implement Australia's first national electric vehicle policy, setting a national electric vehicle target of 50% new car sales by 2030, and introducing vehicle emission standards to reduce pollution and make the cost of driving a car cheaper for consumers. Now, none of these things will make the cost cheaper. I can bet you a carton. I will bet anyone a carton that none of this will make it cheaper. If anything, you're going to be paying more tax, and they'll use that to subsidize all of this stuff. It's just going to be a big con. It really is. The market makes things cheaper, not the government. Sorry, I needed a coffee with that one. So let's look at a study. And this is just from 17th of April, so only about a week ago. Electric vehicles emit more CO2 than diesel ones, a German study shows. And we can trust the German studies. So electric vehicles in Germany account for more CO2 emissions than diesel ones, according to a study by German scientists. When CO2 emissions linked to the production of batteries and the German energy mix, in which coal still plays an important role, are taken into consideration, electric vehicles emit 11 to 28% more than their diesel counterparts, according to the study, presented on Wednesday at the IFO Institute in München. Mining and processing of lithium, cobalt, and magnesium used for batteries consume a great deal of energy. Okay, and remember that. If we're moving to more renewable energy, which is more expensive here in Australia, what they're proposing, they're not proposing nuclear, they're proposing more expensive energy. That's going to drive the costs of all of this production. So even if we had vehicle manufacturing here in Australia and battery manufacturing of this quality here in Australia, but we're switching to renewable energy, that's going to drive the cost up of all of these things, isn't it? A Tesla Model 3 battery, for example, represents between 11 and 15 tons of CO2, given a lifetime of 10 years. That's all? And an annual travel distance of 15,000 kilometers, this translates to 73 to 98 grams of CO2 per kilometer. 15,000 kilometers a year? Is that all people drive? I think I've done a few more kilometers. Oh, of course, when I was doing Uber, of course I was doing more kilometers. That's the problem with Uber, guys. That's the problem with Uber. So, the CO2 given off to produce the electricity that powers such vehicles also needs to be factored in, they say. When all these factors are considered, each Tesla emits 156 to 180 grams of CO2 per kilometer, which is more than a comparable diesel vehicle produced by the German companies Mercedes, for example. The German researchers therefore take issue with the fact that the European officials view electric vehicles as zero-emission ones. They note further that the EU target of 59 grams of CO2 per kilometre by 2013 corresponds to a technically unrealistic consumption of 2.2 litres of diesel or 2.6 litres of gas per 100 kilometres. That's pretty fuel efficient. That is insane. These new limits pressure German and other European car manufacturers into switching massively to electric vehicles, whereas the researchers feel it would have been preferable to opt for methane engines, whose emissions are 1/3 less than those of diesel motors. Wow. That's a little depressing. That is really a little depressing, isn't it? Because you can see here the attempts to be all good for the environment are kind of screwing us over. So what I thought we'd have a look now, what we will have a look, and I'll make sure you can hear me. Good, that's all working. This is the current energy production here in Australia right now, Thursday, 6 o'clock. I'll do a refresh, 6:25. I've been recording for a while. So this is on the east coast here of Australia, and this shows you, fossil fuels, little fire, hydro, renewable, solar, wind is across, and the utilization rates. So red, fully utilized, close to 90%, which is kind of good. You want your sustainable stuff to be fully utilized. Orange, yeah. Green, 0%. 0%. So let's have a look. And remember, this is the time. This is the time when people will be plugging their cars in to charge. Let's look here at Brisbane. What's this one? What have we got here? The Wivenhoe Power Station, hydro output, 64%. Look at that. So it's 161 of 250 megawatts. That's pretty good. What do we got here? We got a coal plant, Power plant, fossil fuels, 101%. So it's running over capacity. It's running over capacity. So she's going a bit hot. She can't take no more, Captain. A power plant, you know? There you go. Output 67%. Wow, look at that. That capacity. That's insane. That is insane. Power station, 98%. Now, what are these ones? That's a solar farm, 0%. Power, fossil fuel, not used. Solar farm, not used. An old power station that's been shut down. A gas one, not used. Rocky Point cogeneration plant. Output, -1%. Okay. Is that taking power out of the system? Here we go. What do we got? This a solar farm. Output 1%. Hopefully it's still producing a bit now. Good work. Good on you guys. 1%. Childers not being used. And here we go. Look, another power station. 100%. 90%. 103%. 93%. And it's not a particularly hot day today. At least down here it isn't. Down in Brisbane. Let's see. What else can we look at? Let's go out here. There's some solar farms. 0%. 4%. 0%. Emerald wind farm. Oh, good. 14%. So there you go. There's your wind power. 14% out near Mount Emerald. What do we have here? Hydro output. 104%. Wow. So they're pushing it to the limit. Barron Gorge power station. Hydro. 104%. You know. Maybe if we had a few... Notice how we've got a dam here producing energy. Maybe if we had some more dams in the centre of Australia that people are proposing. Maybe that'd be good. What do we got down here? Wind farm, 3%. Wind farm, 8%. Come on, let's find a wind farm that's at least yellow. 30% utilization. Mount Piper, 49%. What do we got here? Fossil fuels. Power. What's that? Power station. Another fossil fuel power station. Hydro, 61%. What's that one? Hydro, 28%. Can we find a... What are these? Yellow. Wind farm. There we go. Fantastic. 33%. South Australia. No, Victoria. Sorry, 33%. Good. Another one, 47%. Another one, 42%. Not one in orange yet, are we? What about here? Portland wind farm. Ah, fantastic. 83%. So it's producing 123 megawatts. So that's good. That's good. So they got a fair bit of wind production in Victoria, but how much of it inland isn't producing anything? Notice how it's only the stuff on the coast that seems to be doing well, and you got some here. 99% wind. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but once it gets that high, isn't it dangerous with the wind production? So you can see here, this is good. So wind, but there's a lot of wind production, isn't it? But few of them are actually anywhere near a decent percentage of their capacity. You got a few, 38%, 51%, 83%, but so many of them are at, that's 126 megawatts, and it's only producing 24 out of its capacity. 70, it's only producing 6. That's, it may sound good that that's 38%, but it's only 66 capacity, and it's producing 25. Whereas this one, why aren't any of the big ones on the coast? 83%, yeah, but that's 29 megawatts out of 34, and then you got how much here, Where do we look? 144 not being used. So you can see the wind is a concerning mistress, isn't she, with regards to energy production? Quite temperamental. I think we found one that was fully utilized, but every power plant nearly is fully utilized. Some are utilized over 100%. So you've got to remember, look at that, 2%. Every time this infrastructure isn't fully utilized, we're not getting our return on investment. And that has to be taken into account when you're looking at the energy production of this infrastructure. Whereas the hydro stuff, the hydro stuff's doing much better, except for that one. I don't know why he's doing too bad. How's that one? There you go, 63. Oh, still, that's still not very good. Maybe they're just not using much power down there. Let's look at Tassie with all the hydro. There you go, 23. 62. Here we go, some good ones. 90, 92. 98, 91%. So there, the hydro in Tasmania is doing pretty bloody good then compared to some of the others. Look at the wind here. There you go. That's where you're making all your money for the wind. But I mean, what's the population in Tasmania? How much of that energy is being shipped back over to Victoria, I wonder? So let's have a look at today's energy production by source. Okay, because we're looking at what energy is being produced now. And you've got to remember too, if people are plugging their cars into charge right now as well, they're also looking at, they're also watching TV, they're recording their YouTube videos for their channels, they're making their dinners and coffees, they're going out to the movies. So let's have a look at production. This is today. Let's have a look at kerosene. No, barely not there. We'll put the total one on there. So that's the total energy production. It shows you how it changes through different times. So let's look at solar. So it's that little red one there. Okay. What about this one? This is rooftop solar, and I was quite surprised at how much production that is. But remember, this is throughout the whole day. So it's only this small window here. That's when it's produced. Diesel? Nah, good, it's too small to recognize. Wind. So wind is, we're not getting efficiencies of our infrastructure, but we're kind of getting a steady production. But you've got to remember that's something to be considered. I'm really disappointed we don't have any nuclear on here. Natural gas, that's a hefty chunk. Water, hydro. Yep. Kerosene is just a tiny line. Grid, tiny line. Coal seam methane, not even noticeable. Natural gas, barely a little bit. Waste coal mine gas. Yep, that's a slither. And what do we have? Brown coal, boom. Black coal, boom. Boom. So yeah. So the black coal is changing. That's gigawatts. So let's have a look at solar. 1.2, 1.4. Let's look at diesel. Can you even register it? Nope. What about wind? Wind. Oh yeah, 1.4, 0.9. What's the highest there? 2.5. Natural gas, yeah. About the same as solar, isn't it? Oh, look at the difference. Look at the difference. Let's look at rooftop. 1.2 up to 3.3. 3.3. What else? Water. 2. There you go. So 1.8. It's when you look at the actual and compare that to black coal, 14.7. 14.2, 14.7 looks like to be the peak. Brown coal, 4. Just flat out 4. What about natural gas? Tiny. So yeah, if you compare all of these different productions, it puts it into perspective, doesn't it? So we're getting our imported electric vehicles, electric cars, that are going to be using more energy than diesel vehicles, that are going to have more embodied energy in the minerals, in the production of the batteries, that are going to be more expensive for us, that are going to use energy, at particular times, which even if it's environmentally sustainable energy, is going to be incredibly underutilized, so incredibly inefficient with regards to its output and its utilization compared to the capital investment in these traditional natural resource productions or fossil fuel ways of generating energy. I mean, think how many wind farms we've got in, how much potential capacity is not being used at this time of day. So what do you think, guys? Do you think Labor's on a reasonable, sensible policy to spur this sector here in Australia? Or is it all just an attempt to win votes and get some of the, keep some of the young people that might go to the Greens happy? Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. Ding the bell to see my daily updates. And I'll talk to you all again tomorrow. Bye for now.